Hi everyone! In my previous video, I shared with you some of my favorite tools, and I get the question all the time, Paul, what about your favorite test equipment? We see you surrounded by this stuff. What is your default go-to pieces of test equipment? And in this video, I'm going to share those with you, and you might be a little bit surprised. In fact, you may not have even seen some of the stuff I'm going to share with you because it doesn't show good on camera, frankly. The DMM I'm going to show you is ugly. It looks like it's been dragged behind my car for a while, but when it comes down to business, it's the DMM I use. Again, all the other ones look pretty and the displays show nice on camera, but when it really all comes down to it, this is what I'm using behind the scenes. You're probably going, what? Exactly. This is a Tektronix TX3, and this is my absolute favorite DMM of all time. I got this in 1999, 2000, something like that. And I have yet to find something that's nicer. It doesn't lock up. It doesn't get confused in the capacitor setting when you have some inductance involved, like the other meters I've showed you that I own. And it really is, it has a high res setting. The beeper is almost immediate when you're using this for continuity. It's backlit. Here, I'll show you, or edge lit, I should say. It's got a really nice big display on it, dual display. Edge lit, as you can see. The continuity, as you can see, is almost immediate. I would say it's almost reading my mind, it's so fast. So you can see down here, it has a 50 ohm setting for low ohms. So all you do is you press this. It says short the leads. So I grab the leads and hold them. And it zeroes out. That's as easy as it is. You don't even have to touch anything. So now this is good for very low resistance readings, right? Diode test, everything, standard stuff. Capacitor. Comes with a temperature, the thermocouple and everything like that. And of course it reads current, and as you can see down in the microamps. Fantastic meter, works very, very well. The reason you don't see this, again, is because this thing just really looks ugly on camera. As you can see, the display is all scratched up. I think that is actually from my ProbeMaster probes. These probes, again, just like the meter, are my favorite probes. These are ProbeMaster. They're about 15 years old. Never broken here, ever once, here or here. This piece of test equipment, as you can see, has seen an incredible amount of use. I wish I had one that was, in very, very nice condition, so I would use it on camera all the time. But this one here is, it's been in my toolkit, and it's my go-to piece. So I'll just give you an example here. Very easy to change the batteries. The one downfall, of course, nothing can ever be perfect, right? The one downfall with this thing is it's a little bit battery hungry. So just pop some batteries in the bottom. These are just some dollar store batteries I had around, and they actually last quite a long time. Normally I would put I have some Eneloop rechargeables in here, but I think, well, this was in my toolkit. I have some emergency batteries. I just pop these in, so the whole thing shuts off, and it has a seal. As you can see, it's completely sealed here, and then when you pop this back together, it turns on for a moment and then shuts off again. So you have to remove the probes to change the battery, so you can't make any really bad mistakes. I have this thing hooked up to something and then pull the battery cover off, and of course, this is part of the circuit, right? So they've done that for protection reasons. And yeah, it's an absolute fantastic meter. Again, it's just worn, and it's definitely an ugly meter, but this is, when it comes down to business, this is most of the time what I'm troubleshooting with, not any of those pretty meters that you see. So if you have a chance to get a Tektronix TX3, definitely do so. So I think I put this in the case backwards, didn't I? So if you have a chance to get one of these TX3s on the used market, there we go. It's definitely the meter to have. As I say, it's fast, and it doesn't. I personally have never had any problems with the thing locking up. It has a high res setting, so you hold the blue button, do this, and it says high res on it, and it gives you digits, more digits to read if you want. So again, very nice meter to use. Very, very, just a wonderful piece of equipment. Never given me a stitch of grief. Put new batteries in and away the thing goes. So my very favorite DMM. If Tektronix still made these things, I'd probably have 5 of them, and I'd have them everywhere. While we're on the topic of DMMs, I may as well show you in order the ones that I really like here at the lab. So you've seen me use both of these before, and I really like the U1253B. One of my go-to meters. Nowhere near, in my own opinion, the Tektronix TX3, but it's still a nice meter. Now let's talk about failure points. That's the display on my U1253 now. That's what it looks like. Every time I turn it on, it gets just a little bit dimmer. And these meters have a problem with their OLED displays. They all go bad. And it was overnight. It was working nice and bright one day, turned it on, it's like, wow, that's dim. I really don't want to be using that on camera anymore because, you know, I'm going to have to turn everything right off. I don't know if I can even get the lights down. You can kind of see it moving there a little bit. That's as bright as it goes. Right there. That's as bright as it is. Okay. Pardon the rattle there from the lamp. So this is, to me, it's done. I'm going to have to replace the OLED display in this. And again, like, I mean, if it's going to fail again, which I'm not really quite sure if it is or if it isn't, according to, you know, other people that have owned these meters, I don't really want to waste my time with this thing, so it might just get shelved, right? Just about done. I can see it here, but yeah, it's just about done. It's on right now. You can see that in there, right? So, you know, that compared to a display that doesn't fail. Good old trusted technology right here. And then when you hit the backlight, look at that. It just glows. And on camera, this looks so great, right? Because it just, you know, it stands right out. So I find myself, of course, using this thing all the time here because it shows good. And it is a nice meter. Don't get me wrong. You've seen it lock up before. You saw it lock up in my last video, the one on YouTube with the troubleshooting the Telefunken radio. I think it froze, right? So, but other than that, it's, you know, a great meter. Gets confused again in the capacitor setting. I've demonstrated that as well. The TX3, no problems. We'll measure the capacitance, you know, put this over here and it just doesn't know what it's doing. So, you know, I'll just shut that off even though I really can't even tell that it's on anymore. So next time I turn it on, I doubt I'll even see the display. That's how it goes. They just kind of deteriorate. Every time you turn them on, they get a little bit worse. This was a wonderful meter. Was a really, really nice meter. I really enjoyed this. But, you know, now it's this one. And it works good. I'm pretty happy with this. It just has its own trusty display. I've turned the timer off on the backlight so that it'll illuminate and it won't go off on its own. So it's kind of nice for using this thing on camera when I'm troubleshooting for a long period of time. It's fast, works good. You know, so I would say this is a nice second. I'd say this would be a nice second to the TX3. I've had this for a while now. And you haven't seen this on camera very much because of course, you know, because of this display, I favored this one for such a long time. But this would be my second go-to meter right here. All right, care to guess my third favorite DMM? Here it is. It's the Fluke 233. It looks pretty basic, and it kind of is a basic meter, but it has a really neat function, and that's the reason that I own this. So, for example, turn the thing on, pinch the sides together, take the head unit off. I can have this thing out of the way. I can test, and this thing will read. It's magnetic, it sticks to things. So say you're working on your car and you need to be somewhere and the person that's testing needs to be somewhere else and you need to be monitoring this, you can take this with you. And as he's testing, you can see what's going on instead of yelling across the vehicle and just things like that. Gets it closer to the point to where you want to work. All sorts of things. So for videoing, for me, this works very well as well, because as you can see, it doesn't take up a whole bunch of real estate on the bench, right? So I can have the radio here and I can just have this thing off to the side. And you don't have this big meter all in the way. So very handy to have. It's backlit. You know, nothing too special measurement-wise, right? You know, nothing that I'd spend a whole lot of time measurement-wise, but for, you know, as I say, for its purpose and for what it does, it's very, very handy to have. You can have the display right in front of you when you're working. So that would be my third favorite DMM, the Fluke 233. When I'm designing something with surface mount components, or say I need to verify a surface mount component, or I'm working on some surface mount technology, I continually find myself grabbing this one piece of test equipment right here and using it. Now, don't get me wrong, this is by far not my favorite piece of test equipment, But it's one of those catches. I always find myself going, oh, okay, I'll just grab this thing and use it. And it works surprisingly well. So, as I've mentioned in many of my other videos, I'm not sponsored by any of these test equipment manufacturers or anything like that. I'm simply showing you the things that I use that I prefer. And it's the same thing with this. And I'm, again, not sponsored by any of the stores that sell these things or anything. I'm interested in sharing something with you that may benefit you as it has benefited me. Okay. So this thing is surprisingly cheap. I think I paid 30 some odd dollars, and this would be Canadian, for this thing. And it works surprisingly well. So you pull this thing apart, right? And you can test surface mount parts. When you hold the function down, it says scan. So it goes through a bunch of different settings. It'll find resistors or capacitors and things like that. And it'll do it automatically when you pinch the leads together. You can see it just gives you a low ohms reading. Now, one of the things that I found a little bit aggravating about this thing is you can see how it has the little symbol for noise. So it should have a little piezo element in there that goes beep when you do that, right? And you can move this around auto. So, right now it's on auto, right? You squeeze these together, you get a low reading there. Now, you'd think this would be continuity, right? Ohms, right? Right? Continuity, and it should go beep right now. But it doesn't, because there's no piezo element in this thing. And there is no piezo element in any of these things. So maybe it was a different option or a different model or something like that. But that's about the only downfall I've seen with this thing. Other than that, if you can read a display while you're looking at it without dealing with a beep, right, you're absolutely fine. So I'll just grab a piece of solder here, which will measure as a dead short. You can see here, hold a piece of solder, right? And there it is. Probably some oxidization on that or something's been sitting on my bench forever. But at any rate, very handy piece of equipment. Now, as I've mentioned, I have a local electronic supplier here and or a little local electronics store that I visit quite often. It's Lee's Electronics, and these things were hanging on the wall there. They had a whole bunch of these things there. So if you want to pick up one of these little things, very handy to have on the bench, and just a great little piece of test equipment. Again, nowhere near a favorite or anything like that, but it's an odd thing. I don't know if it's a love-hate relationship with this thing, but whenever I'm testing something, it's always like, okay, I can use my ESI LCR meter, or I can use my Genrad with the probes, with the, it has the same type of surface mount probes as this, but I continually go, I just need a quick reading. So I grab this thing, turn it on, and use it. So it's just one of those things. Of course, if I need a very, very accurate reading, I'm going to be using the ESI or my Genrad 1689. But for most tests, that you just need a very quick verification. For example, say you have a whole bunch of little surface mount resistors on the bench, and say you accidentally have a bunch of 5 and 10K resistors, and you're like, oh, okay, the spot needs a 10K resistor, but they all look the same. You can just open this up and pinch a few of them. Okay, this is a 10K, grab that one, and away you go. So just very, very quick verification, things like that. Very handy to have. When it comes down to portable oscilloscopes, I can't say enough good things about this Fluke 199C. So this thing has its own carrying case, and a lot of the times this thing just sits in its carrying case. I take very good care of this. It works very well. I've had to take the fan apart inside this because the fan was noisy when I got this, and I punched out the bearings, and they have a bunch of fans. They're called maglev fans, and I used the bearings out of that. So basically the shaft floats in the center of the bearing, and it keeps things very quiet. So I guess you could say I rebuilt the actual fan inside this thing. So there really is no breathing holes inside this thing, or to the outside of the case. It's sealed, and it circulates the air inside. Now, this is a fantastic oscilloscope. It's auto ranging. It basically has a DMM in it as well. So you can use this as either a meter. As you can see, it's a really nice large display on the meter, right? Or, you can, again, use it as a scope. It's a dual trace scope. It's nice and quick, very good, 2.5 gig samples per second, 200 megahertz, right? Gig samples per second, I should say. And one of the really big downfalls with these things is they cook their batteries. All right, so everybody complains about this with these things. Get a bit of the light off here. It's kind of glary. So they kind of cook their batteries, and this thing has been sitting in its case now for a week. I was servicing the geothermal furnace at our house, and I needed this in conjunction with a current probe to look at some of the pumps. So I wanted to see how much current the pumps were drawing. And so this has been sitting in my case now for a week, and if I unplug this thing, it'll just go completely flat. There's no battery left in this thing at all. So, and that's because over time, by leaving these things on the charger, they basically cook their batteries. So I have one spare here, right? And this is brand new. I don't know if that's the actual part number for it, but probably is. But it's a brand new battery in the pack here, and basically it just fits in the bottom of the unit, and plug it in and away you go. So it's 2 screws on the bottom here, right? Take these 2 screws out and the case comes apart and you can plug in a new battery and charge it up. So leaving this thing on its own power for a long time, like leaving it plugged in, it has the tendency to do that. And that seems to be the biggest complaint about this particular meter. But other than that, the thing is absolutely fantastic, this meter. Isolated inputs. There's so many things. I could actually spend an entire video and just demonstrate this meter and what a great meter it actually is. Now, these things are on the used market now. These things are in no way, shape, or form a new device. Fluke has a new line that replaces these ones here. But if you want to buy one of those newer scopes, you're going to really pay. Right, so this is an older scope, and you can find these things used online, in online auctions and things like that. So if you have a chance to get one for a cheap enough price, it's definitely the scope that you would want sitting on your bench, right? Or in the case, and you can take it with you. There's the options because the thing is battery powered, right? And it has isolated inputs. It's a fantastic meter. If you're really into working on audio equipment, this scope meter is your friend. It's really hard to find a scope meter that has all these functions, and this other scope meter that I showed you, the 199C, does not have many of the functions that this 105B does. Now, the drawback with this is it doesn't have isolated inputs, but it tests a whole host of other things, and it has a monochrome display, and it's a lot easier on batteries. I'll turn this thing on. Now, as you can see at the top here, it says watts AC, and as you can see, we have a scope display here. This is very handy for testing the output of amplifiers, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the measurement menu. It says more measure, all right? So click on more measure. These are all the things that you can test with this, all right? Keep in mind it's, good for DMM use as well, all right? So what I'm going to do here is just go down the list, and I'll show you some of the things that it tests. It has all sorts of menus. And we'll get to the page. It's going to be here just a little bit. Go down here. These are all the things that it'll test. Okay, so the next page is where it gets interesting. Right down at the bottom. See where it says watts AC? This is a very neat function. Hit select item. 2 ohms, 4 ohms, 8, 16, and 50 ohms. So what you can do is you can take your scope probe and put this across a 2 ohm load. So say you're testing an amplifier and you have a big 2 ohm dummy load. You can put this across that. It'll directly do the math and give you a wattage reading, and you can watch the sine wave on the screen. All right. So you go select item at 4 ohms, right? Because you need to select the correct impedance for this thing to read correctly, right? So we'll say 4 ohms. So you say select item. All right, so now you can turn up the amplifier and you can watch the sine wave on here, and when it starts to clip, you know where to stop. All right, and it'll give you a direct wattage readout. Okay, very, very handy to have. So again, a lot of the functions in this do not exist in the 199C, so this is the reason that I have them both, so I can display either one depending on what I'm working on, right? Now, you'll see that the display is a little bit smaller here for a scope, right? The graticule is only from here to here, basically, right? So all you really need to do at that point is just go to scope, and now you have full screen, all right? So you can really spend some time and get the sine wave just before it's clipping, and then you can go back to meter again, and then you can pay attention to the wattage. So many different, that's just one little sweet function of this meter. It's just a fantastic meter as well. So many different things that these different meters do, but this is another one of my favorites. So those two, basically, these two here, the battery muncher right over here, and then this one here, these are my two go-to meters. Now, depending on the job or what I'm doing, I will take either one with me. So audio use, this is definitely in the bag. This gets left behind. And for pretty much anything else, this thing here will come along. here's a little bit of inside information for you. So I'm all about trying to convey information. I'm all about trying to help you troubleshoot, build, and learn electronics easier and faster. So I'm always searching for ways that I can make this easier so that I can pass on this ability to everybody here. That's what this whole thing is about, right? This is why I'm doing this. Now, I've been working at a certain area for a long time, cleaning it out. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I get the continual question on YouTube and here, a lot through PM, depending on what tier you're at. I get lots of emails too at the highest tier. And people are always asking, Paul, is there any way that you can take us through every single step of a certain build? Now, I've been working with this for a long time, and I'm thinking, how can I make this happen? How can I make every single step happen? So say I'm building a circuit board or something like that. So I want to be able to show you how I etch that board and then take it from a certain workstation after it's etched and then go to the drilling and show you the drilling portion, and then go from that station to the soldering and show you the soldering and the component selection and how I'm doing this, and from that to a verification area. And so I can basically take you through the entire process of what I'm doing in every way, shape, and form. This goes for restorations as well. So if I take a chassis like I did with that DeForest Crosley radio, so many people have asked, Paul, we'd love to see the sandblasting and the painting and the prepping procedure. And where I'm doing this right now, I just can't do that. So I've been working on this facility that's going to allow me to do that. So in a restoration, I can say, okay, let's take this chassis down to bare metal. So we'll go to the sandblaster and I'll show you how the sandblaster works. You can listen to the horribly loud air compressor with me, and we'll sandblast this thing, and then we'll go and prep it. We'll do the masking, and then we're going to do the painting together, and we'll tear chassis down, and I can show you every single step by going to different workstations. So that's what I've been working on. I'm trying to get something together like that. So I've spent back-breaking hours cleaning out area number 3 so I can turn that entire facility into something that I can do all of this with in one area. Now, the Old Time Lab is a fantastic place to be, but it still is too small, and it doesn't allow me to show you all of these because I can't have a sandblaster in there, right? And I can't have a compressor in there, and you can't paint in there. If you're going to say use rattle cans or something like that for painting, you can't be painting in there, right? Because the overspray is just obviously, right? In a sandblaster, I'd have glass bead all over the place because I use glass bead. It's called a sandblaster. I classify it as a sandblaster, but I'm continually using glass bead, okay? So, or crush bottles, whatever. And I'll talk about that when we get to that point. So the whole idea of this, all of these back-breaking hours of cleaning this place out, and I'm starting from scratch. I've moved, I cannot tell you the amount of weight that I have moved to make all of this happen. And you know what we're going to do? I'm going to take you to that facility right now and give you the very first look at where I'm starting, and you get an idea of what I'm doing behind the scenes. And, it'll give you a scope of what I'm putting into this, just so that I can convey this information to all of you. I'll go grab my mobile camera and let's head off to that facility, which is known as area number 3. All right, here we are at area number 3. So here it is. It's quite a big space. You can hear me echoing because I have the place completely cleared out. This is the ladder because I've been installing LED lights on the ceiling. It had these fluorescent lights in the far corner there, the 8-footers. And the ballasts in those are horribly noisy. So they have that buzz, that continual buzz. And of course, when this place is filled up, there won't be echoes in here the way there is right now. But those ballasts that you see right there, they're insanely noisy. So that would be in the audio track. I definitely don't want that. So I've taken all of those down and just replaced them with all of these. And I think I have about 5 spare fixtures because they have strips of LEDs in them, long strips of LEDs in there. And it looks like they've kind of used the case of the lamp itself to heat sink them. So, it's a solid state device that gets kind of hot. And of course, that's not to be trusted, so I have lots of spares. So hopefully those things turn out to be dependable. They were rather pricey. Heater in the corner there. So heater, and then these are just all my stands. I had to have these stands on, these lights here, when I was, you can see them right here. I had to have all of these on while I was replacing all the lamps. These here are fluorescent fixtures as well, but I've just replaced these with standard tubes. I couldn't do that with these because these are 8-foot tubes. And the problem with the 8-foot tubes is they really don't make a standard replacement, and I still have the noisy ballasts. So I just opted to go with something more common and replace these with, the ones up here. But these ones here were 4-foot to begin with, and the ballasts are nice and quiet. So I just got standard 4-foot LED replacements for those. So 6 bulbs in total, and there were, 6 LED strips. So basically 2, 4, and 6 in those there. So that's probably where the compressor is going to live, I'm thinking. It'll probably be right here. And I'm thinking I'm going to probably put the sandblaster in that corner over there, because I'm going to have in this area right here, I think I'm going to, I'll just back up so you can kind of see the full area. In this area right here, I think I'm going to put a large bench, and I'm going to have, the drill presses and the lathes and things like that. I might even put the stuff for doing circuit boards and everything all in this little area right here. And I don't want anything with glass or sand in it close to any type of machinery, right? Because whenever you're using a glass bead or, sandblaster or whatever media you're using, it happens to get all over the place. So keeping it far away from anything that can wear, I think would be okay in that corner. And then what I'll end up doing is making an exhaust for shop vac to exhaust that outside, maybe even cover the shop vac to keep it a little bit quieter. The compressor itself is insanely noisy, so you can endure that with me. You get to be shielded from the motor from the other side, so you can get an idea of how big this motor is. I don't know if you can see that. It's an incredibly big motor. So draws, I think, 30 some odd amps. That thing is a single phase compressor. So, and there's the plug. I'll just grab the plug down there. There's a plug in the cord. This is number 6 wire right here, going into this plug that I've wired onto the end of it. And of course, it'll be going down into that outlet there. So anyways, all of that. So this is the place. Now you're probably saying to yourself, well, Mr. Carlson, there must be some benefit to Mr. Carlson doing this for himself. I'm going to be honest with you. There's no benefit for me at all doing this. Where I'm working right now is absolutely fine. I have a workflow, and it just works for me. I'm doing every stitch of this for all of you. Every stitch. I'm going to move thousands and thousands of pounds of gear in here so that I can do my test bench in here. And I have storage. There'll be storage racks in this area over here. And of course, this will allow me to create that workflow so that I can bring you along with me through the entire flow. That's my plan, and that's what I'm doing. So I can't tell you the amount of work that this has been. The amount of migraines and backaches moving equipment out of this area so that I can make this into an area where I can share the entire workflow with all of you. So that's that. Let's see if I can get all of the lights here for you. So those are all the lights that were installed. And just the amount of work in this place has been astronomical just to get to this point. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this little tour of area number 3. That will very soon be a lab that I can share every single process with all of you. That's my goal, to pass on information, and that's the only reason I'm doing this. So I hope you've enjoyed. If you're enjoying these videos, you can let me know by tapping the heart symbol below. Take care.